If you're a visual learner or you've just gotten bored or uninspired lately in your study routine, then you've got to try mind mapping. You may have heard about it before, you might even have tried it and it didn't work for you, but whatever your past experience with mind mapping, I want you to watch this video, come with me as I walk you through an example, and then promise me you'll try it. Hi, I'm Katie Azevedo of SchoolHabits.com. I'm a private executive function coach who teaches students and professionals strategies to learn and work better. You can find me here, here, and here. And everything I mentioned in the video, including a transcript to the video, you will find in the description box. So you are about to learn how to study using mind mapping. Now, mind mapping is an underestimated and underrated method for taking notes, for brainstorming, and as I already said, for studying, especially for visual learners. And you might think this sounds a little bananas, but some people argue that mind mapping can actually be fun. I know. Now, let me be clear here. I'm not arguing that mind mapping is like the ultimate study method and it's the only thing that you should use from this point forward. Because I want you to keep in mind that the best results come from using multiple study methods and mixing up which techniques you use depending on the content, depending on if you're bored with a certain study or method or not. So I'm teaching you mind mapping so that you just have another tool. If you plan to use mind mapping, you might want to add in another active recall study technique like interleaved practice, the blurting method, or even just simple flashcards. So first things first, what is mind mapping? Mind mapping is a technique where we create some visual web-like, do you like my web? Web-like diagram of a word or of a concept that we're trying to learn. We do this by identifying other words, concepts, dates, people, and ideas that are related to the concept that we're trying to study, and then finding connections between those related concepts. Don't worry, I'm going to walk you through an example. Now, most mind maps look like a web, with the word that you're trying to learn or the concept that you're trying to learn at the center, and then all of the related words sort of branching off like webs or like branches. In just a minute, I'm going to walk you through the process of creating a mind map, and our mind map that I show you is going to look like, it's going to look webby, okay? But there's other ways to make your mind map colorful. You can use different shapes. You can be as creative as you want, but the method for how to create a mind map is important, and that's what I want you to follow. So how does mind mapping actually work? It works because it encourages you to learn a concept from multiple angles. Even cooler, mind maps let you see connections between related ideas. And science alert, that's an essential step of the learning process on a neurological level. And then mind mapping also works by its very nature of it being an active recall study technique. If you're studying and the technique doesn't involve active recall, then unfortunately, hate to break it to you, but it's not actually studying. Now, when you first create a mind map, you can use your notes and Google and your textbook and things like that to fill it in. The ultimate goal is to be able to create a mind map without looking at your notes in your textbook and Google. Okay, you're supposed to be able to, at the end of the day, create a mind map with the word in the middle and be able to generate all of the related ideas and concepts that you're supposed to know. But we don't start there. Now let's compare mind mapping to something like flashcards. Both are awesome and they both use active recall. But flashcards don't force you to make connections between things. It's more like word and definition, right? Very one way. Whereas mind mapping is like, okay, word, definition, concept, that's related to this concept, that's related to this definition, right? It's like multidimensional. And that's what makes the content that you're learning through mind mapping stick around longer. It makes you be able to understand it more richly. And depending on what you're learning, you might need something more robust than flashcards. Flashcards are awesome. They're great for so much content. But you can make a judgment call. If what you're learning can't just fit on the front and back of a flashcard, maybe mind mapping is the study method that you need to use. Okay, so what materials do you need to make a mind map? I suggest you do it on paper. There's a million ways you can do it digitally. I know there's it can be really fun to do it digitally, but there's something that's kinesthetic and primitive about using your hands if you're physically able. So paper, pen, you can use a whiteboard. If you did want to use an iPad or a tablet and use like an Apple Pencil or something, that's still, I still consider that like motor movement. What I'm saying is don't type this. It would actually be really hard to type it anyway, but you want to make sure that you're using your hands because that's going to build those neural networks more so than if you just were to type it. Typing is very not natural. You will also need your class notes, your textbook, and probably Google. Okay, so now I want to show you how it works. And to do that, I'm going to walk you through an example. I'm going to keep the example very basic so that you can understand the method and not get tripped up by the content. So I'm gonna show you an example using Napoleon, okay? And I'm gonna keep the content and the ideas very basic. So yeah, if you're looking at it and you're a Napoleon expert and you're like, Katie, that's like really, really basic. Yeah, I know, but I just wanna teach you how mind mapping works. And as I said, there's different ways that you can add flair and creativity to your mind map. So the way that I show you on the screen in just a second, I don't want you to limit yourself to that's what it needs to look like. However, the method that I'm showing you for how to make the mind map is important. All right, let's look at this example. All right, so step one of creating a mind map is to create your central concept. Now, I am doing this digitally. I did just say that I do not recommend that you type a mind map. However, you're going to see here that the words that I add to this mind map are typed. And you know what? It's just for the sake of making this video. I have put Napoleon at the very center of my mind map because that is hypothetically the concept or the idea or the person that I'm going to be studying. I am going to be tested, hypothetically, on everything there is to know about Napoleon. And I'm going to put his name in the middle. And then step two, we're going to brainstorm and write what I call our layer one concepts. That is the first set of branches that come out of our central concept. I am only going to draw 4 here, but a true, real, thorough mind map on like a complicated concept might have, 20 layer one concepts. So I'm going to write losses, the context of Napoleon's error, his childhood, and his achievements. So that is what we call the layer one concepts. Step 3 is to brainstorm and write what I am calling layer 2 concepts. And these are all of the smaller branches that extend from those primary branches, okay? And you can start anywhere. I'm starting here with context, but you can jump from one branch to the next. If something popped into your brain about the context of Napoleon and you didn't want to forget it, then you would add that, like I did here. I added that he was well liked. But then if suddenly I thought of an achievement he had, then I could add that to the achievement branch. You don't have to fill out each singular primary branch at once, because this is right. It's supposed to be creative. You're supposed to just let it flow, stream of consciousness. All right, so he sided with the revolutionaries. I wrote down the French Revolution. If I didn't know the dates of the French Revolution, then that's something that I would leave blank on my mind map, and that would tell me that I didn't know that information and then I would have to go back and study it. And there was discontent in the middle to lower class. I'm going to go through the remaining branches pretty quickly and I'm just going to add them because it would take forever if I were to do them one at a time. Okay, so I filled out those branches. Again, here it looks like I'm doing it sequentially, like I just wrote down everything about his childhood, then I moved on to achievements, then I moved on to losses. But again, in real life, you can do this in any order. But I did choose another color, if you are noticing, for the layer 2 concepts. And this is really important. If you were doing this on paper or on a whiteboard, if it's a whiteboard, grab a different color dry erase marker. If you are doing it on paper and you don't have another color pen, then do it in your regular old black pen, but then use a highlighter to highlight the terms or at least the branches on the layer 2 concepts, and then another color for the layer 3 concepts, which that is step 4. Brainstorm and write the layer 3 concepts. So if you look over here, that's sort of in the mustard color. So if we look at the top left, discontent in the lower and mid classes, they wanted change, right? There was a feudal system that people didn't like. If we look at that, Napoleon sided with the revolutionaries, those were the Jacobians. They were resentful of the monarchy. All right, so pretending this is my real life, done in time with you mind map, it might be that all I am able to think about as I am studying, all the information that I am able to generate are just those 4 layer 3 concepts written there in mustard. But let's say there's more information about the French Revolution right here that I was supposed to know, but I just couldn't recall it in the moment. Then I would draw a question mark next to the French Revolution indicating to myself that I know in the back of my mind that there's something missing, that I'm just not able at that point in the study process to actively recall that information. Of course, you go to your notes later. All right, and then I'm going to quickly add some layer 3 concepts under the achievements. You notice I'm still using another color. And then the layer 3 concepts to the losses branch. Okay, now this next step, step 5, I'm going to go there in just a minute. It's super important, and this is what makes mind mapping so powerful as an active recall tool, as a learning tool, because when we learn new information, the only way we learn new information is to connect it to information that already exists in our brain. And mind mapping, step 5, which is making connections between layers, allows us to connect new information to other existing information and form sort of clusters of facts, clusters of knowledge that together will make it last longer in our brain. So if you look at my little red arrow here, I connected resentful of monarchy to overturned the French government, right? One thing led to another. That's essentially the French Revolution in a nutshell, right? So when you're done with step 4, which is making, your layer 3 concepts, those are the terms and things like that in mustard color, all right? Then you step back and you look at your mind map and you say, where are my connections? What is related to what? Where's my cause and effect? Where are my little clusters? Okay, and they could be drastically far away from each other on the mind map like this. Yeah, it does get messy, but you just go with it. So if you look at this giant other red arrow going from left to right, I have made a connection between the existence of a feudal system, which was causing discontent in the middle and lower class, to the abolishment of the feudal system under the Napoleonic Code. Those are related. Here's another connection I made. That the Napoleonic Code actually is something that led to Napoleon being even more well-liked. So that contributed to his reputation. Okay, now you may have arrows all over the place. Of course, you can see here that I made them in a different color, and that is what I'd recommend for you as well. Your mind map might look different from this. You might not use all straight lines on your branches. You might use squiggles. It is absolutely okay to add flair and personality, but the primary steps of adding your central term in the middle, and then adding your layer 1 concepts, layer 2 concepts in a separate color, your layer 3 concepts in a third color, and then making your connections at the end, those fundamental steps must be followed. Now, before we wrap up, I'm going to give you 5 additional tips that I want you to consider when mind mapping. Now, the first time you create a mind map, you may only have a few layer 2 concepts and maybe no layer 3 concepts. That is okay. You'll be able to fill out your mind map more thoroughly and have more branches and layers the more you learn the material. Number 2, always attempt to fill out your mind map using no resources first. That's what makes it active recall. And then when you absolutely have excavated everything out of your mind and you can't think of any more and you're looking at all your bare branches, then go into your notes, then go into your textbooks to fill in the gaps. Number 3, keep your concepts to a few words at most. Now, a good rule of thumb is that everything that you write on like the branches, okay, or whatever, should be like 1 to 4 words. Yeah, there'll be exceptions to that, but try to keep it brief. Because summarizing and consolidating big ideas into just a few amount of words is studying in itself. That's getting you to, synthesize and distill the information, and that's actually, that's part of studying. So if doing that is hard, yes, that part is hard and you can do it. Number 4, when brainstorming things to add to your branches and your layers, allow yourself to think freely and non-linearly. Think outside the box. Everyone's mind works differently and creates connections at different rates and in different ways. And that is awesome. And that's one of the reasons why mind mapping is such a good strategy for visual learners, because it is nonlinear. And you can sort of like see the connections between things and like this big picture formulating on, your whiteboard or your paper or whatever. So if you first think of this and then this and then this and this and it's out of chronological order or whatever, doesn't matter. Don't judge the order and the rationale of your mind map. And number 5, as I said at the beginning of this video, mind mapping is an awesome strategy, not just for studying, but also for taking notes and for brainstorming. So if you're brand new to taking notes, then I wouldn't start with mind mapping. I would start with more of like the outline method, just so you get the hang of like, what am I even supposed to take notes on? But as you get comfortable taking notes on things that you're hearing from a lecture class or things from your textbook, then you can move to mind mapping. And then my other suggestion from there is, if you're going to start mind mapping, then I would start mind mapping notes from a textbook and not from a lecture class. That way you don't have to worry about the speed and like writing down things as on your mind map like at the same rate that your teacher's talking. Do it from a textbook first so that you don't have the stress and the urgency of like making it quick. And then brainstorming. I actually use mind mapping so much in my business, especially when I'm coming up with like new product ideas, new content ideas. And I even created my business plan using mind mapping for School Habits back in 2016. I still have it on a piece of paper. Like, I will never let that go. So to use mind mapping for brainstorming works the same way. You put some central idea in the middle of your paper. So for me, I was like, School Habits. And then I had all these like branches reaching off. I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'm gonna have like eventually a course. Yes, I do. I'm gonna have the website. I'm gonna have YouTube. I'm gonna have eventually a podcast. I added that later. Yes, I have a podcast. You could use it to mind map or plan an essay. Instead of using the sort of like linear box-like graphic organizers that teachers like, which can be great, they work fine, but maybe you think differently. Maybe you want to plan and outline your essay using a mind map. You won't know until you try. Honestly, the possibilities for mind mapping are endless. So my friends, that wraps up the tutorial. If you have questions about the process, or you actually do mind map yourself and you have suggestions or variations that you could share here, put them in the comments. I think that would be awesome. And then as always, thank you so much for watching, and never stop learning.